let's hit it and introduce yourself real quick and
Okay.
where you're at.
Well, I'm Keith McHenry, and I'm one of the co-founders of the global movement Food Not Bombs. And I'm at Laurel and Front Street at the Food Not Bombs meal, getting ready to set up.
So just go in kind of what I discussed.
Yeah. So anyway, on today's Friday, but on Wednesday, a really nice man from I think it's Ashton Con Tech or something. I forget the name of the company, but I've emailed it and we could find what that company is. It's a weird Orwellian name. Anyway, they are from Walnut Creek, and their man Coy came and was shocked to find out that we were serving food in the lot across the street, and that we had a shipping container. And so he actually took pictures of it and messaged them to the owner and his boss of the company. But he was telling us and telling me about 2:30 on Wednesday that we would have to move the shipping container by Monday because they were gonna start putting fences up and digging through this property where they were gonna build a 7-story, 205 unit luxury condo project. So I then immediately called up a company and asked them to come pick up the shipping container and move it over here. And we were going to do it on Friday, but they say, well, our truck's in on Thursday anyway, why don't we just do it tomorrow at noon? And said, that's cool. So then I mobilized everybody to, put emails out to go and empty the shipping container, because I know because it lifts at an angle and everything would just fall to one end and be destroyed. So I mobilized people. And then he called me back saying, oh my God, the boss is going to bring a truck right now and move your shipping container. And I said, well, they can't do that. I've got a truck coming in tomorrow. We got to unload it. It's I can't mobilize people right now by 5 o'clock to come out here and unload the whole thing. And so then I said, so that's not actually going to happen. And then he said, well, then there was all this back and forth between me and Andy Davison, the owner of the corporation. And I got an angry call from Garrett from the corporation at one point, screaming at me that I had to move it immediately. They were coming with a truck right now to move it. And so that went on until about 9 o'clock at night. And that was Wednesday night. But then it went without a hitch yesterday. So at about 9, Coy calls back and says, look, so I did a lot of texting to Andy, the owner, and I did a lot of leaving messages on his machine. Couldn't get a hold of him. And Coy was afraid of being fired. He was like, oh my God, I got a family to feed. You've got to help me at least sit right and say that no one will be there on Thursday because we've got $100 million escrow happening that day, and we won't get the $100 million if you don't get everything out of there right away. And I just said, well, we jumped on it. We're moving. Don't worry. And then eventually by the end of the night, like I say, at 9, Coy called back and said, okay, Andy isn't going to freak out anymore. Do what you're doing. And we did it, and it went off without a hitch, and we had food ready at noon, and it was like a regular day. And so that was pretty amazing. So then I subsequently found out, part of that story is that Coy said his company owned that land. Well, the last we knew, it was DevCon that owned the land. But then in the article by Jessica York, it said that the land was transferred on the 31st of December to the new company. And
which is Coy?
Coy's company, yeah, which was Ashton Dev Cal or something. It's another Orwellian name that these developers have. And so that makes it seem kind of suspicious. What's the story? And then the city never told us, the city actually sent us a email kicking us out of this parking lot. And we're supposed to have actually left this parking lot on the 200th day of us serving food every day. And the city manager said, okay, we'll give you till the day after, since we had a celebration already planned and everything. So then we moved over the day after to the other lot. And then we've been there ever since. So that would have been October 1st. We've been there every day. And what this highlights is that the developers are not from Santa Cruz. because anybody that was from Santa Cruz would have known we've been there every day since October 1st.
Yeah.
So it just is an interesting thing that it's out. It just highlights that it's out of town developers, and that there's some kind of financial developments that are not necessarily transparent and are not really to the advantage of the people of Santa Cruz. But I have to say, Coy was a really nice person, and it was a pleasure working with him. It was just a shock to have to move move so quickly, but we did, and now we're back over here.
So originally, when I had first met you guys were at this location.
Right.
And then, how did you guys initially select this location? And then why did it go to there? And when you went over there, did you have any permission, or was it just, this is an empty lot,
No, okay, so what had happened is at first we were at the town clock,
Okay.
which we moved to from the post office.
And what year was it?
And that's 12 months ago. It'll be 12 months ago, the 14th of March. So on Saturday, the 14th of March, there was like all of a sudden a lot of media about COVID. That sort of had been before that, it was COVID on a cruise ship in San Francisco Bay or whatever. And then it became COVID. We had to deal with it.
Wait, let's backtrack real quick.
So
where did you what location were you originally at in Santa Cruz?
Oh, the very, very original one was probably the town clock back in '92.
And then
and then we moved. Then we did the we did the farmers market for a while. Then there became a problem with the drum circle there. Got evicted from there. Then we were back on Pacific. Then there became a problem there. Then there was an empty lot, which is now Ross.
Okay.
And then so we served in an empty lot there for a while, and then we were back to the post office for a long, long time, and then we moved. Then on March 14th, we moved over to the town clocks, because we get usually at the very beginning about 30, 40, maybe 50 people line up, and Cooper and Russell and all of our friends were camping up against the post office, and we didn't want 40 people walking by them when you're trying to do social distancing. So we moved across the street and tried to do as best we could for what we knew about COVID at the time. And fortunately, we actually had one volunteer who just got COVID training at Good Samaritan Hospital, and then one of our best friends is one of the leading virologists in the world. So we took over, we'd used their information on how to do it safely, did the social distancing marks on the sidewalk but then the city came on the 19th and told us we had to leave.
This is March 19th.
March 19th, and they were forcing us out. They put fences around the town clock. Put fences around, evicted all the people out of the post office, put fences around all the different areas there. And so at that point, we then moved to, then we moved over to the county building. The county kicked us out of 2 locations over there. We were on that empty area right on Water Street where nobody ever goes, below the courthouse, that big, huge area of cement. Then
by San Leandro Park, you mean?
Huh?
By San Leandro or San Lorenzo Park?
Yeah, sort of by San Lorenzo Park, but right next, if you were at the courthouse and you looked out onto water, there's a huge slab and a stairs that don't go to anywhere. And so we were using that, but we got kicked out of there. So then we went around the other side, and we would use a vacant patch of sidewalk over there that we set up. And then we got kicked out of there. Then we ended up down on the benchlands. Then the benchlands flooded, and Take Back Santa Cruz, I forget her name, Jane Baker, I think is her name, a tax attorney on Pacific Avenue, came and stole our huge banner, and which I'd hand painted years ago, and so she just took that. She bragged about it on Facebook, and then once everything was destroyed in the rain. And we ended up with about 1.5 feet of water where we're serving, in some cases up to probably about 2.5 feet. So there's no way to serve there. So then we moved to lot 10, which is 24 River Street, garage 10. And we served underneath there during the rain. And then we moved out into the sun. And we realized that there was no way we could handle the increase in number of people coming to eat. So we thought, okay, we'll advertise that we're going to be at this parking lot. so that people have like a week's notice, because people were really frustrated that we kept moving from places no one could find us. We couldn't get our food donations. We got cut off by Second Harvest, thinking that the city had banned us from feeding anybody, and then we had to argue our way back. We had already at that time like I think 8 or 9 pallets of food on order that was supposed to be delivered to us, and they canceled that, and then we reinstated it because we proved that it was just the town clock was the issue, not anywhere else. And then before the flood, the 8 cops pulled me over, and I was on my way to get bleach, and with his fancy like unmarked car, and on Water Street, and told me that I had to have a permit to have the cars down on the bench lands. This is where the city had told us to go, is the bench lands, and we told them that it was probably not appropriate place because it floods, and then it did. But so there was like this huge hassle with that. And then Officer Jones came and tried to kick us out again kicked us out of or garage 10 one time, and then we came back, and then we just stayed there and advertising that we're moving to this lot, so that everybody that came that week would know where we were, and then we moved over here, and then we stayed here for a long time until October 1st.
Of 2020.
2020, and then we were given an email by Susie O'Hare saying that we had to move to that lot across the street, which I forget, I think that might be 23, and because they were going to put heavy equipment here to work on the levee. Okay, so we move over there. They fence off this whole.
So is she with the city?
Yeah, she was with the city manager's office.
Okay.
I don't know if she still is, but she stopped corresponding with us.
Okay.
But that was her end of her correspondence.
So she was the one that gave you, and so she's from the city, and she said, all right, move from this place
over to that one. Correct. Right. And then it turned out, though, that they never put anything in here at all. They just had a chain link fence around it for at least a month, maybe more, when I think it was election night, or it might have been, I think it was election night. There was a march down here. There was some protest, anyway, I forget what it was. It might have been New Year's Eve, or it might have been, I think it was election night. And there was a large march, and the march came to here and took all the fencing and took it back to the police headquarters and gave it back to them. And so so we didn't move over here then, because we kind of liked that with the trees and stuff. It was kind of a nice place. So we just stayed there. We ignored this place, and then and everything was happy there. And our interaction with the police was only about like severely intense cases of violence, where somebody would call the police and they'd come over to kind of handle it, or sometimes unhoused people will call the police on each other, and those were the only so they weren't like dealing with us at all, ignoring us completely, and so that's how that happened. And then that whole case of us having to move over here, so we just moved over here. So now we're here, and it's actually not necessarily a bad place,
So does the city the whole time, they pretty much know what you're doing and what's going on, and they just say, just push you aside, go, all right, do whatever? Or have they been like, you need to have a permit, you need to have this? I mean,
they always say we need to have a permit, but we have a global policy against accepting or requesting permits. We do that because of what happened initially in San Francisco, where we had to go to federal court. Judge Peckham ordered the city to give us like one last list of everything we needed to qualify for a permit. We got the permit, then the health department came out. They had a staff member put a sheet of cake on a table that I'd set up in front of City Hall. I was trying to assemble, in those days they didn't have pop-up tents, you had to, piping and stuff you had to assemble, so I was doing that. Then they paid a person to come up and take a slice of cake, and we lost our permit because we didn't have our food facility permit on the food facility, visible on the food facility, because we hadn't built the food facility yet. And so that was the end, and we ended up with no permit. Then then the mayor actually would ultimately say, oh, all they need to do is apply for a permit. We applied 136 times. We were arrested actually a total of 1,000 times. I did 500 days in jail. I was had my ligaments and tendons ripped several times and placed in a stress position cage for several days. Faced 25 life in prison. Settled on 500 days credit time served. So we like, okay, well that's untenable. And then we started realizing that during that struggle, we go, well, this is a gift of compassion. It's unregulated by the authorities. We kind of felt that way to begin with, but there was like a lot of political pressure. And we actually followed the letter of the law in San Francisco after the August and September arrest in San Francisco at Golden Gate Park, because I believed, and we believed as a group, that it had nothing to do with the letter of the law. So we were like so squeaky clean, and they still didn't violated us, and they went on to make another 750 felony conspiracy to serve food without a court order arrests, and lots of violence. People were hospitalized. I was hospitalized. So we had our first world gathering in 1992 in San Francisco, and we agreed that we would never apply for a permit again. We would never accept a permit again, and that's our global policy. And so we just don't ever. So they emailed us things they claim are permits. We don't care. If you actually read the words that were on that permit, on any of the permits that the city has sent us since they never sent us anything about permits until the pandemic. But all of them, like for instance, in the one for the bench lands, I was supposed to pay for all the damage to the bench lands. I wasn't allowed to have any vehicles down there. I couldn't allow anybody to have a dog at the meal. I couldn't allow anybody to smoke on the bench lands. And I'm like, that's not my job. My job is feeding people and making sure there's a hand washing station, that people have free masks and stuff. I'm not gonna go running around, oh my God, you're like smoking on the bench lands. And then, of course, once they set up a camp there was no way we were gonna. That also, you can't. You don't want to. We support the San Lorenzo Park kitchen by bringing food and things there, but we don't want to bring the population that has to eat with us to somebody else's house, because particularly with COVID, it doesn't make any sense. So we don't do that. So. Anyway, so the same thing. There's a bunch of crazy things that were in the permit process allegedly for over there, at the lot 23 or whatever it is, and there's no way we would have any interest in complying with it, even. So we sent a memorandum of understanding to the city when they tried, in response to their first alleged permit, which was on all the detailed things that we would definitely do to maintain public health. Because why would you go to jail for 500 days and then want to endanger the people you're feeding? Doesn't make any sense. So we gave them a memorandum of understanding, outlined, and we kept giving it to them every time they emailed us about a permit. We'd send it back to them there. There's things like, for example, we had to get the health department to order the city to give us wood platform at the benchlands, because you can't serve food for hundreds of days on a piece of grass without the grass being destroyed. Whatever particles of food just, and then it's wet at the same time. That's even if it wasn't flooded. So that, the unfortunate thing of the city government is that they do not, most of the leadership of it, the city council, certainly the city attorney's office and the city manager's office, view unhoused people as essentially rats or pigeons or some kind of vermin that don't have any personal agency or any that they're, that they need to be babysitted and that kind of thing. They don't get that these are the people that, in many cases, many of my friends that eat with us, we're actually building things in Santa Cruz, which we now enjoy as buildings, and we're injured doing so. And now live on the streets. A classic example is Robert, who was injured working for Granite Construction, and now they're fighting him in court for disability, so he lives in a vehicle. he was living at Ross Camp. He was the hero of Ross Camp that saved the people in the car. He was born and raised here. He'd been here forever, and he was building Santa Cruz, and now he's disabled and lives in a car, and he's getting ticketed like intensely. And Robert's just one of many, many, many stories of people that are living out here who are injured in construction or in some aspect trying to keep our town together, and therefore now are being just treated like trash. And it could happen to anybody. Anybody could break their back.
Yeah.
You know, I started when I broke my back. I was around with the walker. I would hear those stories like crazy. Everybody see me in the walker and they tell me their story about how they were working on this building over there, and then they got injured. Now they live outside, and it's just like a, you know, and that's obvious that would be the case.
Yeah.
But it's not something people. So now you were asking about cooperation with the city. The city government itself doesn't at all ever. In fact, they want us. They would probably be happy if we were gone, or at least before. Like early in the pandemic, they probably would have been happy. But for instance, we saved Oswald's from being vandalized, although I just saw that it was broken into recently, because we were walking by, and there were two guys about to break the window in to get food on something like the 20th or 21st of March 2020, because they were desperate because everything was closed and they couldn't get anything, and there was no water or anything for anybody. And we said, hey, we got food just down the street. Go down the street and we'll give you food. And they're like, oh, wow, that's a lot better than breaking into Oswald's to steal their stuff. And so, it didn't get broken into. So maybe over time, somebody in power got the idea that, that as much as they want to get rid of homeless people, they can never get rid of homeless people.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's better just to live with Food Not Bombs doing what we do, because it's actually decreased crime in downtown Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
So.
And then, so you moved back to this location, and was that once again on the advice of the city, or was it who gave you?
Nobody said anything. So the other thing, I kind of consider the city, since the pandemic started, as essentially celluloid avatars, because you never see them. They don't go outside, or they don't go anywhere I ever met at.
Yeah.
And that's because of the pandemic. They're like staying at home, right?
Yeah.
Sheltering in place. So they make these decrees, because they voted to give absolute power to Martin de Bernal.
Okay.
And Martin de Bernal makes these executive orders, which frequently are attacking us. And then that's just the way, then we're supposed to do whatever his decree is, and we just basically ignore it. So we don't, we just came here because we knew this would be a better place.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough space in garage 10 to accommodate everybody, and people really, we weren't going to eat in a parking garage when it's a nice sunny day, and we need a big space so that there is social distancing available, and we need a hard surface, and this has a hard surface. And we need an area where a lot of people can see us, because we also are the first entry point often for homeless people into homeless services. Yeah. Because you go to say you call up homeless service, Housing Matters, and you get in kind of a loop of phone calls. And if you're newly unhoused, you're kind of in a panic and you don't know really what to do. And then you happen to see us, and then we help welcome you, and we can send you to all the services that exist.
So do you guys serve as a central point of information?
Yeah, we are definitely a central point for information.
That's great.
Almost every day there's at least one person, often several people, who have just become homeless and have no idea how to be homeless at all anywhere, but let alone in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
So we get that quite a bit.
Let's get to real quick about the ordinance that the city had said about how they're going to move Highway 9 encampment. What's your reaction to that? What the insight in your viewpoint?
Okay, all these sweeps, first of all, the CDC had made it very clear in I think of March 11th or 12th announcement that a homeless sweep is inadvisable, that people should just stay sheltered in place, because could be a problem. And it's obvious, because you kick when they kicked out the people in phase 1 evictions from San Lorenzo, they all ended up being in the doorways all downtown. Well, if anybody in that camp had COVID, you just sent the COVID over to a doorway at somebody's business. And so I think that it's a, the other thing is that under Martin v. Boise, which just settled, and they gave millions of dollars to the victims in Boise, Idaho, that Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case says that unless you have an indoor place for everybody to be, you cannot be moving people around, and that's before the COVID. So it's a violation of the
Human rights.
of human rights and cruel and unusual punishment. It's a violation of that, and so they're violating common sense, first of all, and also the U.S. Constitution. And they those people will now be moved. They'll be having to just wander around town until they set up a camp somewhere else. And I can't see that helps anybody. The city, we actually set up a self-managed camp at behind Rosk. We call Phoenix Camp. That could potentially be done again. And we had a very good system there, but we were raided after 5 days by the police. The other thing that's happening is that they're going to bring to City Council an anti-homeless ordinance, a change in what was the camping law, which they've retitled to make it sound like they're sort of allowing people to live outside. And then they have areas of concern, or areas of, I forget what their name they've got, but they got this like new language now that they've created to try to fit into Boise, Martin v. Boise's ruling. And one of the things it's saying is that you could camp outside from 8 at night to 8 in the morning, but you have to pack everything up and move around. But then they have these areas of concern where you can't camp, which is almost every place in town. So it's kind of this weird thing that, and it can be any place in town, according to this ordinance. They could decree anything, a place that you're not allowed to camp out. But it just shows the inhumanity of the city, and also the fact that they don't really talk to unhoused people or spend any time with them in any real way. Because, for instance, Tony, do you have you know what time 8 o'clock is?
I'm talking right now. Can I speak about something? There's no, there's health and safety sanitation problem. There's no handicap restrooms here.
Yep.
There's no place to wash your hands. It's pathetic. People get sick, they have diarrhea. There's no place to go. Yeah. So then you step on feces and stuff like that, and then if you sleep somewhere and build a fire because it's raining and wet, you get arrested. I've gotten arrested for smoking a cigarette, drinking a Coca-Cola at the Loud Nelson, at the freaking City Hall, because the bathrooms, it was hot. Heat stroke is even worse than hypothermia. Yeah. They're committing crimes against humanity and violating Constitution and federal fucking law. Yep. They're fucking stalking. They're not only stalking, they're creating, they're harassing, they're profiling. These are all felonies. They're committing perjury. City Hall, they're all guilty of treason against the Constitution. That's against the people of the United States. Yeah. You know, one of the Constitution amendments is seek shelter, seek food. They take your food. They've arrested me for fucking public.
Yeah, I watched them take all of his food and all this stuff from
public intoxication, beat me down, broke my arm. That's premeditated malicious mayhem. That's worse than the murder.
Yeah, so Tony, let me go back to the interview, but I'll hang with you in a bit.
When you're done with him.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yep. So
that's important.
Yep, it is. What you're saying is right on. So So the sweeps. The reality is we have all these empty. So right now, this is what I would propose. In March, they're supposed to open the Hampton Inn Hotel on Mission Street. They should have everybody, if they don't want them to live in front of Housing Matters, they should put every single person in that hotel. There's enough room for everybody living in front of Housing Matters to be placed in that hotel. That would, first of all, be there's the city and county have money to buy the hotel, and they should just buy it and move in. And the likelihood of somebody coming down for vacation in Santa Cruz and staying at the Hampton Inn is virtually unlikely. I mean, they might get 3 or 4 people every once in a while. Maybe they get 3 or 4 people to check in there every night. But I think about at least 100 hotel rooms. Maybe a lot more. It might be 200. I haven't really looked at the total number, but I've been watching them build it for months, and so that's the thing that we're built. There's like several hotels now were being built over by by the boardwalk.
Yeah.
You've got hotel on
Yeah.
Ocean Street that's being built. I've been talking to Dr. Robert Ratner, who's the new person hired by the county to do housing. I passed on the Hampton Inn address to him to see if the county would buy it. So that's really what should happen, is that they should be taking all these empty units and putting people in them.
Yeah.
And while they're waiting for the building on Pacific to get completed, or on Ocean to be completed, which is getting close, have transitional camps where you have a shower, you have toilets, you have the, we were the only wheelchair accessible toilet in downtown Santa Cruz when we when we did Camp Phoenix. But Martin Bernal called all the different portable toilet companies in the county and told them they're not allowed to rent to me. So and then we tried to get other people to rent. I tried to get healthcare, the Homeless Persons Healthcare Project to rent them for us, and they also were told they weren't allowed to rent portable toilets. I had arranged to have 6 different toilets in downtown. I had 6 nonprofit groups willing to fund each toilet. I wrote an ordinance that I gave to Martin Bernal on how my proposal on how there would be a first alarm person who was already paid to go in that neighborhood, and one of their jobs would be to look in the toilet every 30 minutes to make sure somebody wasn't dead or or passed out on heroin or something, and that got rejected. They would be able to put, this is the richest country in the world. Now the other thing, and this is, we have the wealthiest people in the world living right around here and owning property right here. So, we're right next to, Silicon Valley. Yeah. And so what's up with it? They can't raise money to do stuff that, I raise money to run this thing by just me calling people up and asking for money. They could do the same. I tried to get the new building on the corner of Pacific and Mission and across from the post office. I met with Cummings when he was mayor and said, let's buy that building. The state just announced they've got money to buy buildings to house unhoused people during the pandemic. Take that money, buy that building, put people in there. They just ignore it. They don't do anything. So now we're coming up on the number of unhoused people. We haven't seen anything yet. Once the housing moratorium, already with the eviction moratorium, we're getting tons of people forced onto the streets and evicted anyway, because there's no penalty for evicting people. So landlords have all kinds of ways of getting rid of you, and we're seeing an increased number of people being kicked out of their housing. Once the moratoriums, federal and the state and city moratoriums are completely over, people are supposed to pay their rent plus 25% of their rent after that to stay in their property. I don't know what the arrangements are for people with mortgages, but it's very likely that the 40 million people facing eviction, a high percent, even if 1 million of them are evicted, it's going to be very noticeable, the amount of people living on the streets. And so our plans are to stay here, to keep doing this, because we know that the conditions have only started to get bad, and we are always trying to get more resources, more organized, better systems to handle what will be maybe decades of mass poverty. And so that's our plan. And we already, I remember on September, I think it was September 10th of 2019, I made a flyer saying, come to City Council to hear plans for what the city's plans are for economic collapse. And they just laughed at me. Now they've got the economic collapse, they still don't have plans. So.
Quick question for you. Just answer this in real quick, because we're at 35 minutes, right?
Okay.
I know that you're one of the co-founders of Foods with Bombs. And then how is your association with the national organization? Are you still a part of that, or how's that?
Okay, I am the coordinator of the global movement, and I've been that basically since for 41 years.
Right.
And right now we're working with our groups in Myanmar under the military rule. We're trying to support them. We also have we have 4 volunteers in jail in Belarus right now that we're trying to get out of jail. We've got a huge crisis in Lebanon that we're working at, because we're like the people feeding as many of the 300,000 people that were displaced in the explosion at the port. We've got a whole bunch of stuff going on, and we're having total chaos in South Africa trying to deal with that, but we're still doing it. Australia is cranking, although they're having hard times with the different lockdowns. Malaysia's lockdowns are really hard. We're haven't had anybody killed recently in the Philippines, but we did have 4 people murdered by the government about a little over a year ago. So we.
How big do you think how big is the organization total? With all total volunteers they have worldwide?
We probably have in the area of 50,000 or more volunteers. We're way over 1,000 cities.
And then
We're in at least 65 countries, but maybe more.
And then where's the central headquarters?
That would be this vehicle right here is the central headquarters. Because I don't really have a home personally myself. This is the good old world headquarters right here.
It's impressive, Keith. Well, I want to say thank you. If we have any more stuff, I know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. That's beautiful.
You're a good man. I appreciate it.